and welcome to the first in a series of tech talks that we'll be doing over the next several weeks. These tech talks will cover a number of different topics, like robotic process automation, DevSecOps, that's development, security operations, software design, as well as today's talk on Lean and Agile. And Lean and Agile in the crisis, managing a lot of the crises that we've had lately, the fires, the smoke, the virus, a variety of things. Today's talk is sponsored by the good folks at the Kavanaugh Group, V2 Solutions, and my company, Seamless Partners. Today, my guests are going to be Roland Kavanaugh and Susan Bauer. Hi, Roland. Hi, Susan. To give you a little bit of background, Roland is an expert in Lean, Six Sigma, and Agile methodologies. He's been consulting in a whole variety of industries. In fact, almost every industry I can think of, including banking, energy, insurance, utilities, education, and wine. He's written several books on the topic of Lean and Six Sigma. His most famous is The Six Sigma Way, which Forbes named a while back as one of the 10 most important business books of the decade. We also have Susan Bauer, and Susan has her master's degree in organizational development. She's been doing a number of a lot of consulting work in education. She's got 40 years in the wine business, and she has a lot of experience in community development. And then me, I'm Dave Kearney, and I have been building and scaling companies for over 30 years. My concentration is in executive leadership and software development. So with that said, I will open it up to our discussion for the day and start with Susan. I want you to give me, if you could, an overview of Lean and Agile and how they work together, if that works.
So Lean and Agile are a group of methodologies that came out of sort of manufacturing and IT over the last 50 years. And they're a framework, they're a mindset that gives us a process to use when we're trying to solve problems in an organization. They're a prescribed set of steps, a prescribed way of doing things. Some people look at Agile as the go-to for IT, for software development, and some look at Lean for more towards manufacturing. But the reality is they actually dovetail quite nicely together, and it's easy to combine the methodologies to make one sort of overarching continuous improvement mindset. So for example, in education, school districts who have been dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, who have Agile methodologies already steeped into their culture, are doing a much better job of rolling with the punches as new information becomes clear and new mandates come down from either the federal or the state government. It's important that the entire system, every person who's part of the organization, can get together and talk about the ins and outs of it, because currently the COVID-19 crisis is more of a health crisis as opposed to an educational crisis, but educators have to deal with the health part first, and then deal with the distance education or the in-person education or things like that. The organizations that don't have an Agile or Lean process already going in their organization are going to really, really struggle if they're trying to bring this up during this time. It would take a whole lot of really, really skilled consultants to help an organization in this current environment to make a difference and to come up with reasonable and actionable solutions. But the districts, for example, the couple that I've been working with who already do these things have cross-functional meetings between departments and manage to have a great deal of very, very open communication in between schools and in between districts, even within their state or within the country, are much, much more able to take in new information and make a decision and then pivot on where they need to go next.
I see. So it really helps with prioritization and managing cross-functional decision making when you're using Lean and Agile and it's embedded in the culture of your organization.
Right.
It's not something really that works if you have to slam it in place once a crisis happens. It's something that you need to build into the organization and build into the culture ahead of time.
Right. Right. And it also helps by giving different perspectives on the problem. Because even between the three of us, we could look at the same problem and we could all look at it completely differently.
So Roland, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. Why don't you tell us about an example maybe in the insurance business or something that may have, because we wrote a recent paper on that, recent article on that, and that may be a really interesting story to talk about.
Well, so Dave, let me bring in a PG&E story. So Pacific Gas and Electric is the major utility that serves most of the state of California. And in October of 2017, there were some major fires in Napa and surrounding areas that were attributed largely to PG&E's equipment. And they've been implementing Lean Six Sigma for quite some time in their organization, and they took advantage of that talent and skill and knowledge in creating a response organization that was able to then provide support for the folks that were affected by the fires that resulted from the windstorms that created the power lines going down. And that response organization was largely based on Lean Six Sigma principles, and ultimately was autonomous in the fact that they were able to make decisions on the ground in Napa County and in Butte County, and that they were had the flexibility to make decisions that were relevant to the current situation without going all the way back to senior management.
I see. So what you're saying is that because of a culture of Lean and Agile, they were able to do distributed decision making on the spot, and individuals can make decisions rather than having to pass them up to corporate.
That's correct. Yeah, as they understood the broad parameters of the situation and the guidance, the policies from above, they were granted the ability to make decisions locally. Yes.
That's great. That's great. And so can you describe how you would introduce Lean and Agile into a company? So PG&E, they've been doing Lean and Agile a lot because of the work that you've done with them. But how do you introduce it to a company in the first place? I mean, how do you deliver? What's the process of bringing a company up to speed on Lean and Agile?
So at the highest level, that means an executive or a division leader that has a desire to make change and to engage their subordinates in decision making and in execution of those changes. And so typically when those get started, we get asked by that executive or that division manager to come in and to help them implement, because they've got a need they've got some problem they need to solve or some long-term cultural change that they'd like to make. And they recognize that they really need to rely on the knowledge of the people that do the work rather than the people that make decisions at the higher level.
I see. And so I've been with you on various consulting arrangements. Tell us a little bit about a workout. What is it? What does the process look like?
Well, so a workout is you call it a town meeting where we've drawn together all of the people that do the work. So these are the people on the ground that do the work every day. These are the people that answer the phone. These are the people that make, instant decisions about how to deal with a customer or deal with a problem. Plus the people that are making the policy decisions at the higher level. We bring them all together. We pose a question to them, how to solve this, and we facilitate them carefully through to their set of solutions and an implementation plan for those solutions.
I see. So that's how it works with even small and large companies can, using that process can work through, no matter how complex their issues are, they can work through and create solutions that way.
That's right. So on the small side, an organization called Fifth Planet Games, looking at how they do weekly releases of new complex scenarios for their games, all the way to the Bank of the Philippine Islands and how they go about deploying mortgage application processing across 800 islands.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna hold you on Fifth Planet Games for a little bit and get into that kind of claims processing. So Susan, we just heard from Roland about PG&E and large companies and small companies using. I know you've been in the wine industry. They've suffered from the fires and smoke. Why don't you talk a little bit about Lean and Agile in the wine business?
So, the wine industry goes through a great deal of change every year, depending on what the grapes do. We're an agricultural entity that ebbs and flows with nature, essentially. And I was having a conversation with a person who I know at Trinchero recently, and he was talking about the ways that they use Lean and Six Sigma and Agile in their day-to-day with stand-up meetings where they get together and they communicate what their issues are every day, so they can adapt to what that day is bringing. They get to a vineyard to harvest the grapes, and they find that every grape has been singed. There's smoke taint everywhere. So then they have to come back and they have to say, well, what are we going to do with all this juice? That's an agility issue. Well, we've got to pivot on a dime and figure out what to do with that. Where's that going to go? How are we going to treat it differently? And those management decisions are made not at the top level. They're made in the vineyard. So everybody in that chain of command, everybody in that system is empowered with the same level of decision-making authority to say, this is good, this is not good. And that's a training issue, and that's an empowerment issue, and that's a cultural issue where, everybody is going in the same direction and everybody knows what to do. And that's what you want in a time of crisis. You want everybody to be able to say, yes, let's go this way, or no, let's go this way. And then everybody turns on a dime. Yeah. Almost militaristic.
You need that kind of, especially given climate change and all of the aspects that are affecting companies today. You need that kind of agility,
right?
So that companies can make decisions quickly and that they are not essentially monolithic or focused on a few at the top that have to make decisions across the organization.
Right.
Very good. It's very
Well, in
good.
a lot of situations in a winery, they're trying to make a decision and the winemaker's doing a pick 30 miles away.
Right.
And you can use cell phones, but they can't make a decision based on cell phone calls. They often have to look at it and feel it and see what's going on. Yeah.
So Dave, let me interrupt for just a second. My mentor, Ord Elliott, is a Marine, and he likes to quote a book, and I'm sorry I don't have it at my fingers here, that talks about the Marine philosophy of, our objective is to take that hill, but you as a platoon need to make your decisions immediately on the fly as you go. And it's a little skinny paperback book, and it's a great one because it talks about that empowerment of, we've given you the objective, and how you solve that is your problem within these parameters. And it's pretty amazing. I'll try to look it up.
Okay. We can include that in the notes of the video when we're done.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so we've got an idea of utilities, the PG&E story, and the winery story. Roland, why don't you talk a little bit about the insurance industry? I know Susan and I wrote an article a few weeks back on one insurance company, but I know there are a number of insurance companies you've worked for. Why don't you give us some ideas about claims processing and various aspects that have arisen through all the various crises that we're suffering?
So, yeah, I have a couple of those. I have a myriad of those. But an important one is an organization that is in the named storm business. And our interaction with them was around new business. So how they sign up new clients that need insurance. However, as we concluded working with this project and streamlining the whole process of signing up new clients, which included creating work cells of underwriters and assistants and others that needed to support the process of handling a new business request, they were inundated with claims from a huge named storm in the Southeast. And the consequence of that was that they took their knowledge from creating this new business process and transferred it immediately to how they go about handling claims. And they, on the fly, real time, streamlined the claims processing process to where they were able to maintain the turnaround times that they had promised in their original contracts to their clients, as they maneuvered through all of this new knowledge about what this named storm was and who it affected and what geography it affected, and how it impacted them. And it was a major issue because it forced them to reach over into their reinsurance. I mean, it was a big deal. It was very painful to them, but they were able to manage it through using the lean techniques that they had learned in the new business process streamlining.
And so, right, so that turning on a dime and making sure that new processes that come up or new issues that come up can be handled because they've got the decision infrastructure in place to make that happen is important.
That's right, and they have the knowledge of how to not require high-level decision makers to make every decision, but rather to deploy policy in a way that people that are handling calls on the phone can make the decision on the spot, and it's the right decision.
It's in a similar light. The article that Susan and I wrote a few weeks back on Guide 1 Insurance had an IT problem because all of a sudden all their workers were working at home and they had an enormous amount of issues. Who wants to address, Roland, do you want to address the Guide 1? I know you're familiar with it.
Well, so let me start that one because did a substantial amount of work with Guide One some years ago in helping them convert most of their IT processes to a lean and agile format. And I use both of those words because agile, often prescribes somebody's way of doing it. And really what we were doing there was looking at the principles of lean and implementing them in a way that they would help Guide One to manage all of their IT infrastructure. And that was very successful. It took quite a while to make it work across the system, through everything from supporting old infrastructure to implementing new infrastructure to security, and ultimately, as it was implemented and the knowledge was rolled out, they became very, very successful at being quick to respond to new issues, and at the same time empowering their people to be able to make decisions on the fly. And that led to the situation that I think Susan's going to speak about in the current environment.
Yeah, so when they all went remote, they found that there were problems, as everybody's having, with devices, with connectivity, with learning how to use Zoom, or understanding how to use Microsoft Meeting, or any of the number of collaboration tools that we have at our fingertips these days. And through those prescribed methods that they'd already been doing for a long period of time, they were able to really, really quickly and easily determine what the problem was and what the best way was to fix the problem. And then how to get that problem, that change implemented in a really, really speedy, in a really little, low, small, short amount of time.
Yeah. With very little drama in the process. I mean, they were able to implement those, and I think if you ask the employees, there was not really a blip in what was happening, because Shane Moss's team at Guide One was so good at kind of turning that around and prioritizing and making decisions on the fly.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to bring it back, Roland, to talk about Fifth Planet Games, because now we've kind of brought up the IT world and the technology world with the Guide One side. Why don't you talk a little bit about the process you went through with Fifth Planet Games? I know that they had to shave off something like 24 hours in their development process. Their development process is every week they had to deliver content, or they by a certain time on Friday, or they would lose revenue for the weekend from the gamers that were playing their game. But they had to shave off those 24 hours. I think it's an instructive story for working in crisis, because essentially they're working on very, very quick turnarounds and moving that software out all the way through testing, development, deployment, testing, and whatever. So if you could kind of talk about Fifth Planet Games and what process you went through for them, that might be very helpful.
Yeah, Dave. So as when we started on this project, they were, as normally expected, they were heavily divided into, I have my silo, you have your silo, I do development, you do testing, and of course, when you looked at the timeline, I've consumed all of the time in development and you have no time for testing, so let's just deploy it. So there are common problems that we've seen in every industry. So what we did was brought together the lean tools and the workout tools, the concept being get the people that do the work together to solve the problem, and forget about the boundaries, forget about the silos, and get them to map the process, to understand all of the steps and all the issues associated with each step, and to work together to decide how they would arrive by Friday with viable, tested, new opportunities for their gamers, so that they could deploy them and not expect to have to recall them on Monday, because that was a huge issue. So by bringing together the folks that do the work, they were able to let their guard down and to talk about, well, we experienced this. Well, we have this issue. Well, it's not clear that, what the new release needs to be. Oh, well, so testing doesn't really know what to test for until Thursday afternoon when it shows up. And so consequently, they're not prepared to test it, so they can't get it tested by Friday, et cetera. And it was very, very, very heartening and interesting to watch them work through this process of discovery and then ultimately solution development, so that they were able to create a completely new timeline with new indicators of who needed to do what, when, and what knowledge you had to have in order to execute your part, so that they were successful in getting these implementations out in time for the weekend when the gamers wanted them.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good discussion. Is there anything else, any other stories you'd like to tell? Because I have a few questions that are popping up on the Q&A, and I think we only have time for a few questions. So should we move on to questions?
Certainly.
Okay, so first question I've got is, do you know any schools that may have used Lean and Agile to handle closings and openings? Who wants to take that one?
There are a number of schools that have been using Lean and Agile to confront problems that have happened during this crisis. Broward County Schools has actually done quite a lot of work in Florida around decision making and quickly making decisions and quickly making changes to make things happen. Every teacher in the world has been using agile processes this year to make quick changes. Here in California, they used a lot of agile and lean thinking processes. I wasn't part of it, so I don't know if they did it or not. But when they decided that they needed to send out a network pack, a connection point to every student who otherwise didn't have internet service, so that they could be sure to be able to get online and weren't relying on spotty connections or going to Starbucks to get to school. The school district that I work with was using the same processes. I was working with them earlier this year to deal with issues around their after-school program. And how they were going to be able to administer a program where they didn't know who was going to show up and how it was going to be delivered, if it was going to be online or in person. They didn't know if they were going to be able to do sports. They didn't know if they were going to be able to do activities, or if they were just going to be making videos. So we spent a good deal of time with them talking about how to sort of plan
Mm-hmm.
each scenario so that they had an idea of what they needed to do. So when the decisions were made, they knew which direction to take, because they'd already thought through that process.
Great.
And through that, they also recognized the importance of keeping clear communication throughout their departments or throughout their sites, where they didn't really recognize that it was important for a teacher at one site to talk to a teacher at another site. They learned that they were having the same problems and each trying to solve them independently. But when they were able to combine their thought process, they were able to more clearly and succinctly solve a problem.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Second question, and this is probably the only question we're going to have time for. What about the airline industry? How might it help airline companies to deal with the fast changing issues?
So maybe let me take that one. an associate of mine was doing work with Gatwick Airport and trying to increase the number of landings and takeoffs that occur in a 24-hour period. I mean, that's actually a common problem amongst all of the various airports that have high traffic. And they were trying to squeeze in a couple more landings and takeoffs, which is a common use of lean tools. And COVID came along. All of a sudden, they have no landings and takeoffs. And so it's a moot point. So their shift and in working with the airlines that they had been collaborating with this landing and takeoff problem, their shift was to help those airlines use lean tools to deal with the rapidly changing environment associated with COVID and the fact that they had immediately lost tremendous amount of landings and takeoffs and travel and passengers, but also the constraints that have been begun to impose as a result of the virus itself and its transmission capabilities. So the application of lean tools made a substantial difference in the ability to respond quickly with confidence to this new virus.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for today. I want to thank Roland Kavanaugh and Susan Bauer for joining me on this webinar. If you have any questions, I see a number of questions that have popped up that people have typed in, and if you have additional questions, we'll be happy to answer them offline and send you a text message or send you a message answering the question. So have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.